I'm a random pizza delivery man, just trying to restore Pizza Hut nationalism to this
I love
great
that.
country.
Does the pizza have seed oils?
I don't know. Does Pizza Hut? If it does currently,
Is it Pizza Hut?
It is Pizza Hut.
Oh my goodness,
It
Mike!
is.
Mike, you got to leave.
I had to do.
I'm
I had
sorry.
to-
Listen, we
meme.
got to cancel you right
We're
now.
gonna make it.
Listen, how
Listen.
dare you
How much
bring-
are they paying you for the sponsorship?
Pizza Hut is like the defining act of like retail franchise American capitalist empire building. Have you guys
Like
ever
McDonald's.
seen? You ever seen like the Khrushchev ad? I think, or was it Gorbachev?
It was
The pi-
McDonald's though.
No, the Pizza Hut ad.
Oh.
There's a Pizza Hut ad right after we won the Cold War, and we were putting Russia through shock therapy. We were privatizing trillions of dollars of Soviet-owned public wealth and turning it over to George Soros and Bill Browder and these other like vulture capitalist firms. And one of the ways that we were like publicly justifying this is like we were bringing American capitalism to Russia. And so I think, was it Gorbachev like starred in a Pizza Hut ad, and it was two Russians talking to each other about like, you know, how they were uncertain about like how the future was going to be in this new Russia, this new capitalist Russia. And then they look around and they see that they're actually like in a Pizza Hut, and then Gorbachev comes in or something and is like, you know, this is basically the key to making Russia
jeez.
great again.
Pizza Hut is the key to making Russia great again?
Well,
Was it
I
tearing
don't
down
think.
the
Let's be
wall?
honest here with their reproduction levels and alcoholism. I don't think it worked. To be fair.
Putin,
But it was an
if you're
export
watching,
market.
we have someone you can sponsor for Pizza Hut in Russia.
Yeah, I don't think that's gonna.
Disavow.
No, I don't think that's gonna work, Robbie.
No, 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 no.
I
It's
think
the
that
opposite.
might backfire.
No. This
Yeah.
is a covert, clandestine black ops operation in order to wrest soft power control
Lord.
over Russia through.
Now the
tasty
media is going to come out and
pizza.
say you're a Russian agent.
No, now they're going to say that I'm a patriotic CIA spy trying to infiltrate Russia through Pizza Hut
my
nationalism.
Now there's conversations about the Russians spreading fake news against Tim Waltz. I don't know if you saw the story going around a few weeks ago. I didn't fall for it, but a lot of other people were kind of falling for it a little bit, talking about some very serious accusations.
This is the
I was
black
Yes.
insurrectionist
Yeah,
account.
and
What
I'm like-
gave it away?
Yeah, I know.
Yes.
Like an anonymous account. Like, hey guys, we got to be better than the Atlantic here. We can't base our stories based off anonymous sources that have no backing at all. We were talking about this story. This is the major story right now that the
gave
media
his
is
source.
buzzing about right now. But again, I didn't fall for it because again, there was no source, there was no evidence. It was just hearsay. I had a huge conversation with Robbie about this when we were at the gym today, and Robbie was saying, "Oh, this happened and this happened." I'm like, "We got to fact check this because
There's a lot of
so
fake
much
news.
disinformation.
but
There's
the
so
whole-
much fake
if
news
you go
out
on
there. It's
Kamala's
crazy.
account, it's all fake news though on Twitter. Like literally every story is literally fake.
Yeah.
But-
so it's like sure, there's a lot of things that are online. You see the Tim Walz pedo thing. I of course I'm not like I'm like there's probably not true because it just doesn't seem. It doesn't seem like they would put him in if they've done. That's something you can't really hide for that long.
Other journalists were saying that they had reached out to that anonymous account and asked, like, hey, what's your source? Especially when he wasn't allowed to post for a few days. And they're like, and he gave those other journalists his sources. And like those other journalists verified. From my understanding, I wish I remember.
No, I
who
saw Ian. I
watched.
saw Ian post about it, but then he retracted it. I
Ian
know
Crossland?
Ian Carroll. No, not Ian Carroll.
Make America Great, Ian Crossland.
But now they're running with the headline that this was Russian disinformation. And again, as independent media, we got to be better than the corporate media. This latest, I don't know if you've seen this latest article by The Atlantic, but everyone is, of course, talking about it. The Atlantic also has some very interesting ties to, individuals like Miss Maxwell there that are hanging out with Lauren Powell. Just, chatting it up, hanging out, as of course she's connected to The Atlantic that now wrote this big piece that, of course, everyone is talking about in the corporate media, along with, of course, the latest comments from John Kelly, a member of the previous Trump administration, as this larger kind of attack on Donald Trump is very interesting. It's very fascinating to see at this particular juncture because I don't know about you, Mike, but it definitely does seem like the corporate media is trying to rile people up. It's trying to make them become more of extremists. It's trying to hyperbolically and emotionally manipulate them so they believe that we are literally going to be reliving the 1930s again. And I don't see this as an accident. I see this as a kind of deliberate provocation of the American public to prepare them for chaos after November 5th.
world's dumbest blob op. This is ridiculous. This is the Atlantic. The Atlantic is the toilet paper that the CIA uses to wipe its butt with. And then it just basically, or it's more like the trash can in the toilet when the toilet is clogged that you would put such disposables in. That's what it is. It is just like when dumb CIA rumor mill disinfo is being processed by the small intestine, it gets squeezed out through the butthole of the Atlantic. That's all it is. It's Ann Applebaum on the who's the marquee Pulitzer Prizing staff writer there. Yeah, okay, she's a board member of the National Endowment for Democracy, which was set up in 1983 by the CIA in a letter to the Justice Department to get back the Black Ops power over propaganda that they lost in the Church Committee hearing and with Carter. That's all it is. That's literally what it is. And Ann Applebaum herself was busted in the Integrity Initiative as part of the Inner UK cluster cell, as part of the British intelligence clandestine censorship operation, where in their own orientation papers, they told everyone to be helpfully uninformative about their sources of funding and to try to recruit influential people from business, from military, from journalism, from government, from regulatory and culture into these inner cluster cells that would be able to swing news cycles in a highly coordinated way. Every single person amplifying this story in the first pass of it was either CIA, FBI, counterintelligence, DOD, or state. Hey, guess what? That's the inner sanctum of the foreign policy establishment. The whole thing, it's the thing that I think is so hilarious about this is this comes on the heels of like 6 months of concerted effort of this exact same crew of dirty job blob operatives saying that we need to ban rumors. We need rumor control at FEMA. We need rumor control at CISA. We need rumor control at state. Rumors, because we can't distinguish between mis and disinformation. So we should just short circuit any news cycle that appears anywhere on the internet if it's an unsubstantiated rumor. Well, guess what? I would take two anonymous sources recycling 8-year-old Trump Hitler. That's a rumor. Okay, guess what? By your own standard, you should be deplatformed, demonetized, and frankly, you shouldn't be allowed to have any of our pizza.
Yeah, they live off rumors. If it wasn't for rumors, they wouldn't exist.
Amen.
If it wasn't for fake news and disinformation, as Lawrence steals the pizza there.
Do you want to slice? Luke, did you want to slice?
I'm okay.
Don't
I'm
show
totally
that.
fine there. But no, truly, this is just a larger kind of example of how desperate, of how absolutely unhinged and how insane a lot of these people are. And most importantly, just how dumb they think you are for, of course, thinking that this is going to be something that people take seriously. Now, there are some people that do take it seriously. There are some people that are convinced by this, but the people who are paying attention, this is a dangerous gambit that they kind of play here, because the more that they double down on their lies, the more they also face the possibility of awakening people, because the more you kind of play with this larger kind of propaganda, the larger you expose yourself for people finding out who you really are, and then understanding that there's larger kind of scams, psyops, and operations being run against you that, of course, are meant to prey on your ignorance.
They're desperate. I mean, I think you agree with this, Mike. I mean, it's a last ditch effort. You see the poly market. You see the polls, right? They needed to do something. They don't have anything else to do.
I'm imagining like the CIA writer's room on this. It's like one of these Transformers movies, except it's the same plot, but they don't even have better explosions. We've already been through this how many times? Remember when Trump was keeping books of Hitler quotes by his bedside? And it was...
That was a mysuperchat.com.
Oh, okay.
Super chat that came in.
No, like how many permutations of this movie, Trump, Hitler, can we see? This was 2015 stuff. It's like they were sitting around a room like, we really don't have anything.
Yeah.
Well, what if we just run them? Everyone's seen that movie. Yeah, I know, but we need something. I know, we've already seen this stuff. So now they're just funneling it through, what is it, Mark Kelly? By the way, can we do a...
John Kelly.
John Kelly, yeah, thanks. Mark Kelly's the last one. Can we do a physiognomy check on this guy, by the way? Would this face ever lie to you?
He looks like such a trustworthy bureaucrat, and he looks like your next door neighbor that, of course, probably hasn't assassinated anyone or done any kind of covert ops at all.
That guy's got some skeletons in his closet, dude.
Yeah, I mean, he
He's
looks like a Bond villain.
Yeah,
Literally.
Yeah, it's like resting liar's face. It's a permanent arched inverted brow with the eyebrow. It's like the face has just endured centuries or millennia of like collective sociopathic liars given high-level national security clearances to lie to the American people and the rest of the world about what he's actually doing at DOD. This was the same snake who got fired. This is the same guy who, by the way, was the one who pushed through the executive order that nationalized our elections and gave rise to CISA. This is a bad hombre, and frankly, if you were to AI generate the least trustworthy face in human history, this is top 5.
I would absolutely agree. It looks like he likes lying. It looks like he just gets off of it. And you could really see someone's face and eyes, most importantly, and then really get a kind of larger determining factor of who he is. As, of course, I think he represents the perfect kind of swamp monster that, sadly, Donald Trump surrounded himself with in his previous administration. I mean, you look at the guy, absolutely just the type of guy you would expect in a movie to literally play the villain.
He's been a miserable guy his whole life. I mean, you can tell by looking at him. I agree with Mike and you, Luke. The guy's, probably this is his only attention he's ever going to get. He's looking out. He's crying out for attention. He's miserable in his personal life. They came to him. We need a story. He's like the perfect guy. He's like, he probably volunteered. And he's just making up stuff out of thin air. I mean, it's really pathetic on what they're doing, and it's.
I'm also expecting and predicting now a larger kind of psyop against Joe Rogan. I think they're going to resurface all the horrible things that were ever said about Joe Rogan, and they're going to be preparing all that propaganda, maybe with some new stuff. Maybe they'll mix some stuff in, but there's going to be a full-on... There's probably, Mike, I don't know if you would agree with me or disagree with me, there's probably a full-on operational team meeting right now in the depths of the Pentagon and being like, what are we going to do to counter Joe Rogan having Donald Trump on the podcast right now? Because you look at the little rumblings from the corporate media, they are already calling him the worst person ever as they detail how Trump has canceled some of his events to be on the Joe Rogan podcast. This, to me, is going to be a meltdown of the corporate media that is going to be responding to this in an absolutely crazy, unhinged way.
They gave McDonald's E. coli the day after Trump went there.
Yeah.
What do you think they're going to do to Rogan? But this is so stupid of them to do this with this timing because Rogan hasn't interviewed Trump yet. And I think that the sort of vibe of it was that he was going to try to take a somewhat adversarial tone in order to hedge politically. But if you look at his X account, he actually retweeted that article, or the Joe Rogan Experience official account did. Like, it's very clear they are paying attention to this, and I feel like it's going to radicalize them for Trump in the way that the Andrew Schultz interview did. Andrew Schultz wanted to interview Kamala. She declined, so he just had Trump, and he was neutral during it. But then, they got along well, but afterwards, his show got canceled, and it was very clear that it affected him personally, and he felt that same sympathy with the martyred class that I think brought so many of us into this movement.
Yeah.
And I think that's why it was so smart for Trump to kind of leak that he was going to be on the Joe Rogan podcast, because he knew there was going to be a kind of very crazy reaction from the left and the establishment, because they are gearing up for this larger hit against Joe Rogan after this. And we got to understand here, the Joe Rogan podcast isn't a home run for Donald Trump. There's a lot of contention there, specifically around 2021, specifically about a procedure. There was, Donald Trump hitting Joe Rogan after he praised RFK just a couple weeks ago. So we have to understand this interview could go any way, but by Donald Trump leaking it and having the left kind of respond like they are right now, he's kind of guaranteeing more of a kind of easier, more friendly type of interview. Now, Joe Rogan did publicly say he knew that life was way better under Donald Trump. Mm-hmm. He has publicly criticized both candidates. He has criticized Kamala Harris a lot more, but he's also a podcaster that's not known for being very tough. He's not known for grilling people or being angry at people. So either way, I do see Joe Rogan being put in a lot of pressure, and how he will handle it will really be very telling to see the larger pressures that are outside of him.
He invited Kamala on.
Yes, I was wondering about
what
that.
I'm saying is that she can't do an unscripted interview. So that's, I think her team was protecting her because she's invited. Why isn't she going on? If she went on, there wouldn't be these stories, right?
She's desperate. She still might do it. Like there's people
after this Atlantic story.
There's people with rumor that are spreading the rumors now that she canceled.
She has
but if
to,
you're her
she
and
would
you're
have
that,
to do it.
If you're her and you're that desperate,
But she doesn't
You
have to
gotta go for
Is she going to
broke.
wear the pearl
You
earrings?
got- you
Is she
got-
going to have it? How is she going to do
You
it?
got to go for that long run.
She's
You-
already been
you gotta
proven she
figure it
can't
out.
do anything without a teleprompter or the pearl earrings. So
She
how
can, and she's okay. But
they didn't release the 60 Minutes interview. They edited it down to 20 minutes.
How is she gonna go? How is she gonna justify going on Call Her Daddy and then be able to explain canceling on Joe Rogan or
I don't think she canceled. If you're Joe
receiving the
Rogan, I don't
invite
think you
and
want to
then
do this interview.
No, didn't Joe Rogan extend
No,
the invite?
Joe invited
Of
her.
course.
No, no.
He
Joe
has
invited her,
to, but
and
he
so
has
she-
to.
She declined.
It's not that he
She
wants
declined.
to. He has to because of the pressure that he's facing.
No, he
Okay,
wanted
fine,
to.
but then
And
whether
no,
Theo,
he doesn't
Theo
want-
Vaughn invited Theo. I was just watching the JD Vance
Yes,
interview.
that
He
was
invited
great.
Walls and he invited Kamala. They both declined.
and the Vaughn interview is great, but what I like the ball's in Kamala's court when it comes to the Joe Rogan interview. How can her team, how can she justify going on a small podcast? Or I know it's not small, it's still a large.
Call Her Daddy's really big.
It is really big, but
Yeah.
compared to Joe Rogan,
It's one of the bigger ones. I mean, Rogan's the top, but she that's talking about different. Those are softball. He's going to ask more serious stuff about how she's going to run the country. She's not really asking that. She's talking about like sex and stuff like that.
yeah. I mean, how big is it? I had never heard of the Call Her Daddy podcast until Kamala was on.
I'm pretty
it.
sure
It's top
teenage
five.
girls love that
It's top
stuff.
five.
It's like
It's
promoted
not fun.
degeneracy
Yeah.
by the establishment. Yeah.
But
Oh, that's
can
terrifying.
you imagine like a less receptive setting for Kamala Harris to be in than a Joe Rogan? These are 3-hour, totally unscripted. First of all, Kamala does not do any public speaking appearances whatsoever without a team of 17 White House interns, the chief of staff, David Axelrod, and 25, DNC consultants, plus, McKinsey doing some, outside private consulting thing, and then pre-setting up every single question, working with the editors to cut whatever needs to be cut. She has not had an honest moment in this single campaign, and the entire charm of the Joe Rogan podcast is that is unfiltered, unscripted, nothing's edited out. It's friggin' live. Live Kamala Harris for 3 hours. Have you seen her
She
live
did
for
the
30 minutes?
debate. and
She had
did the
an
debate.
earpiece and she had the questions ahead of time though.
Okay, she could keep the earpiece first of all, and you think Joe Rogan would call her out?
But
Like,
it's
hey,
not
can I try it
live.
on your earrings?
Yeah, it's
She's
not
not going
live.
to admit to it. No, it's not. But,
live, so
he's
they
not.
won't be
But he
able to-
won't edit it. They film it live, and then they don't show it live. But when they release it, he's not going to edit any of it.
And with the debate, there were 3 people on on her side who were doing most of the debate for her. Arguing over the FBI crime statistics and all this stuff. That was Trump versus David Muir, and with her talking in like 45-second platitude sound bites that are all totally pre-rehearsed because this one's on foreign policy, and so we say these buzzwords on foreign. There's no real-time back and forth on that. In fact, they changed the rules to make sure that sort of thing can't
true.
happen.
Maria Shriver, you saw that when she was in the town hall. Someone asked, "Can I ask a question?" They're like, "No, these are all pre-scripted." Did you see that with the last town hall with Kamala?
Yeah, no, exactly. And it's the same thing with the local radio stations in Detroit. It's the same thing as you mentioned with 60 Minutes. But the whole magic of the Rogan experience is that it sort of reveals the person for who they really are. Because you can escape yourself for 3 minutes or for 10 minutes or maybe for 20 or 30. You can't escape yourself for 3 hours.
Yeah.
And,
If they decide to do 3 hours, that's the question.
right. But part of it is the Rogan opportunity here, I think, is to give a permission slip to people who are on the fence about the social consequences, because they're still allowed in polite society. They're still allowed, to be good, upstanding members of the Joe Rogan community voting for Trump because Rogan himself has platformed him. I think that's sort of the mobilization here, is people who are sort of Trump curious or on the fence, or they're sort of sitting this one out, and then they see Rogan and Trump get along, and they're like, you know what, actually, that's the club I want to be in.
Yeah, I think RFK Jr., other than Rogan, made the biggest impact on Donald Trump. And if you look at a lot of the people who were kind of undecided, it really was the RFK Jr. endorsement that played a major role in all of this. And we saw it kind of bubbling behind the scenes with specifically after the first attempted assassination of Donald Trump. We saw the two get on a very long phone call, discuss a lot of particular matters. And the way that they did it, the way that they were able to, of course, galvanize this larger moment and get people who were in the middle, get people who were kind of, not trustful of the establishment to kind of take a look at all of this and start a larger conversation about health, I thought was absolutely brilliant, and I thought was the major kind of game changer when it comes to this election.